And later, a Hollywood legend reincarnated? No, we're not talking about Shirley MacLaine. I think she's still alive. But somebody who says she can prove she's Marilyn Monroe reborn. Plus, Marilyn Monroe reincarnated? Well, it sounds crazy. We're going to be meeting the woman who says she's the former Miss Monroe and the doctor who says he can prove it. Coming up next in Scarborough Country, where have you gone, Joe DiMaggio? You better get Mr. Coffee out and have a stiff one. One woman's now saying she's Marilyn Monroe reincarnated, and her doctor says he can prove it. The ultimate sex goddess of the 20th century. Of course, the ultimate sex goddess of the 21st century, but in the 20th century, Marilyn Monroe was the icon of Hollywood glamour until her shocking death at the early age of 36. But now, Marilyn's making headlines again. Here's the twist. A Canadian singer thinks she's literally Marilyn Monroe reincarnated, and newspapers like the LA Times are writing about it. With me now is that singer, Sherrie Lea, also her psychiatrist. We have Dr. Adrian Finkelstein. He says the research that he's done proves Sherrie Lea really was Marilyn Monroe in another life. So tell me, Sherrie, when did you get the idea first that you were Marilyn Monroe reincarnated?
When I was very, very little. I was around 5. And it came as flashbacks and chest pains and frights. And it wasn't a pleasant experience, to be quite honest.
When you were 5 years old, you had flashbacks that you were Marilyn Monroe?
Yes.
What do you remember first about her life?
What I first remembered actually was the servicemen around. There was a show called Hawaii Five-0, and that seemed to be the closest thing towards what I remembered the men looking like, being dressed in suits all the time, and that was something for me, and I felt attracted to them at 5, but that's kind of wrong, so and then there was more and more flashbacks constantly all the way up till I contacted Dr. Finkelstein.
How specific was it? I mean, do you remember times when you were with Arthur Miller? Do you remember times when you were with Joe DiMaggio? Do you remember times with Bobby Kennedy? Do you remember how you died?
Yes, yes to all of those things.
Okay, how did you die?
I remembered it emotionally.
Yeah,
by my own hands.
By your own hands?
Pills.
How's that?
Alcohol.
Alcohol?
Marilyn, yes. Marilyn was manic depressive. I don't think really anybody said it before. I don't think they're really zoning in on the fact that she was an extremely depressed person, just like any other person who needs medication or perhaps therapy. She didn't get that, and because of her social status, she didn't really have time to get that. And she got iller, and she died. That's just the way it is. She was suicidal.
She's suicidal, and you say you remember she took her own life. Doctor, you claim that through your studies you can prove what the LA Times was talking about, that your patient actually is reincarnated as Marilyn Monroe. How do you do that?
Well, I think images speak louder, and I gave a clip of a video with a past life regression I performed on Sherrie, in which under a very deep hypnotic trance called somnambulistic, after I suggested to her to forget anything that she knew artificially from public record about Marilyn Monroe, and that's backed by scientific journals creating selective amnesia, she responded to hundreds of carefully researched questions by me about the life of Marilyn Monroe, and especially about Kennedy's and how she really died. And it was very dramatic. She was screaming, crying, gripping my hand. I think.
Well, I'll tell you what, Doctor, stay with us. We'll be right back on the other side of the break with more Scarborough Country. Let's now bring in psychiatrist Bethany Marshall. Bethany, talk about reincarnation and what you heard the doctor talk about.
Well, I don't know about reincarnation, but she really does. This woman meets the criteria for something called delusional disorder, and that's where the patient fancies herself to be like usually a famous figure, Christ, Jesus, a celebrity. But with delusional disorder, the delusion is so well thought out that often they bamboozle the psychiatrists and the other treatment providers. There is an uncanny relationship between this woman's life and Marilyn Monroe's, however, in that Marilyn was treated by a man named Ralph Greenson, was taken into his home towards the end of her life because he was so worried about her. So the first Marilyn 1 and Marilyn 2 both had treating providers who were somewhat swayed by their celebrity and very concerned about them.
Sherrie, you want to respond to that?
Hey, that can fit some people, but I got a lot of people around me who enjoy my company and they think I'm quite normal. So that's time-consuming, that delusional stuff. So I would think that, no, I'm okay. It's actually just a spiritual thing.
Bethany, final question. Why do you think the LA Times and other newspapers are so fascinated with this type of story?
Well, we're all fascinated with celebrity. We're fascinated with Marilyn Monroe. Her psychiatrist is somewhat fascinated by her because Marilyn, too, may buttress a theory that he's trying to support in his writings.
All right. Thank you so much. I greatly appreciate it. Sherrie Lea, Dr. Adrian Finkelstein, and Bethany Marshall.